The rescue shuttle trembled as it descended through the crimson atmosphere of Draconis. 7. Captain Maria Valdez gripped her seat, watching the burning wreckage of the colony's ships scattered across the jagged valley below. The Meridian Hope had broken apart during its emergency landing, its hull twisted like paper against the crystalline rocks. "Life signs?" she asked, her voice tight. "1," her co-pilot replied, fingers dancing across holographic displays. "Faint. Sector 7, near the engine debris." They landed hard, the shuttle's legs crunching against loose stone. The air outside was breathable but hot, shimmering with strange energy that made their instruments flicker. 6 crew members rushed out, medical kits in hand. Scanning the wreckage, they found him wedged beneath a collapsed bulkhead, wrapped in emergency blankets that had kept him alive. A baby boy, no more than 6 months old, his face red from crying but otherwise unharmed. His identification bracelet read, "Kale Rourke." "Got him," shouted Dr. Yenna, lifting the infant carefully. The baby's cries echoed off the canyon walls, high and piercing in the thin air. That sound saved him. It also doomed the rescue. The ground shook. Small rocks began tumbling down the cliff faces, surrounding them. Captain Valdez looked up, and her blood turned cold. Massive shapes moved against the sky, their wings blotting out the pale sun of Draconis 7. The Titan drakes had heard the infant's cries. "Back to the shuttle. Now!" Valdez screamed. The first drake descended like a falling meteor, its scales gleaming like polished obsidian. It was easily the size of their shuttle, with eyes like molten gold and teeth as long as a man's arm. It landed between them and their ship, talons gouging deep trenches in the rock. The creature's throat glowed orange as it drew breath. "Drop him." Valdez shouted at Dr. Yenna. "Drop the baby and run." The doctor hesitated for only a heartbeat, but it was enough. She placed the infant on a flat piece of metal from the wreckage and sprinted toward the cliffs. The crew scattered, diving behind debris as flames washed over their shuttle. The metal hull screamed as it melted, their only escape consumed in seconds. More drakes circled above, their roars shaking dust from the canyon walls. The crew ran, stumbling through the maze of wreckage, heading for the narrow canyon passage that the massive creatures could not follow. Behind them, the baby's cries continued, small and helpless against the backdrop of destruction. Captain Valdez was the last to reach the passage. She turned back once, seeing the infant still alive, still crying on his piece of metal. 3 drakes surrounded the area now, their massive heads lowering to investigate. She wanted to go back. Every instinct screamed at her to save a child, but she had 5 other lives to consider. "Forgive me," she whispered, and disappeared into the canyon. The largest drake approached the crying infant, her scales a deep red like cooling lava. She was ancient by drake standards, her wings scarred from countless territorial battles. She lowered her enormous head, her breath hot enough to make the metal beneath the baby glow faintly. The infant stopped crying for a moment, staring up at the creature with wide eyes. The drake's name, if translated to human understanding, meant Ashwing. She had lost her own clutch of eggs just days before when a volcanic vent opened beneath her nest. The grief was still fresh, a hollow ache in her chest. She should have killed this crying thing, this soft-scaled intruder. That was the way of drakes. That was the law of their world. But the baby reached up toward her with tiny hands, making soft, cooing sounds. Something in those sounds resonated with the empty space where her maternal instincts still burned. Carefully, impossibly gently for a creature of her size, Ashwing closed her jaws around the emergency blanket and lifted the infant. The other drakes watched, confused. One challenged her with a threatening roar, questioning the strange behavior. Ashwing responded with a blast of flame that sent the challenger retreating. This was hers now. She did not understand why, could not explain the decision even to herself, but she would protect it. She spread her massive wings and launched skyward, the baby clutched carefully in her jaws. She flew toward the floating mountains, toward her nest built on impossible peaks where no human could survive. Behind her, the wreckage of the Meridian Hope smoldered in the valley, a grave marker for all who had died. All except one. In the high command station orbiting a distant planet, Captain Valdez filed a report with shaking hands. Cale Rourke was listed as deceased. A memorial service was scheduled. His parents, who had died in the crash, would be mourned alongside him. No one would ever know that the baby still lived, cradled in the nest of a creature that should have been his death. 20 years passed on Draconis, 7, and the boy who should have died became something no human had ever been. Cale stood on the edge of the floating mountain, his bare feet gripping stone that would have frozen a normal human's flesh. His skin had darkened to a bronze color from years under crimson sun, marked with scars that told stories of survival. His hair, long and wild, whipped in the thin air as he looked down at the valley far below. He wore clothes made from Drake's shedskin, tougher than any human fabric. Behind him, Ashwing rested in her nest, her ancient body still powerful despite the passing years. She made a low, rumbling sound, a question in the Drake language of vibrations and harmonics. Cale turned and responded with a series of throat sounds that no human vocal cords should have been able to produce. He had learned to manipulate the resonance in his chest, mimicking the way Drakes communicated. "I am ready," he said, though the translation was more feeling than words. Today was a bonding hunt, a ritual every young Drake underwent to prove their place in the world. Cale had insisted on participating, despite being soft-scaled and small. Ashwing had tried to refuse, but Cale was stubborn in a way that even Drakes respected. He had to prove himself, not just to the other Drakes who barely tolerated his presence, but to himself. He descended the mountain using paths only he knew, handholds carved by his own hands over years of exploration. His human flexibility allowed him to navigate spaces the massive Drakes could never reach. At the base, he entered the Crystal Caverns, a network of tunnels that glowed with the strange energy that saturated Draconis 7. The hunt required him to track and face a stormback Drake, a mid-sized aggressive species that defended territory with vicious efficiency. Cale moved to the cavern silently, reading signs in the disturbed crystal dust, the scorch marks on walls, the lingering heat signatures his adapted eyes could now detect. He found his prey near an underground lake, its scales crackling with electrical charge. The creature was twice his size, built for killing. Cale did not have Drake fire or Drake strength. He had something else, human intelligence and adaptation. He picked up a crystal formation, its structure resonating with the cavern's energy. When he struck against the stone floor, the sound echoed to the tunnels in frequencies that disoriented the stormback. The creature roared in confusion, its electrical discharge firing randomly. Cale moved quickly, using the shadows and the smaller size to position himself behind the beast. With a Drake bone knife he had crafted himself, he struck the nerve cluster at the base of the creature's skull, a killing technique Ashwing had taught him. The stormback collapsed, unconscious but alive. The ritual did not require death, only dominance. Cale sat for a moment, catching his breath. Then the cavern floor began to shake. The underground lake erupted as something massive rose from its depths. Water cascaded off scales that seemed carved from the mountain itself, each one as large as Cale's entire body. The creature that emerged was beyond anything Cale had imagined. This was not a Drake. This was something ancient, something that legends whisper about but few had ever seen. A Colossus. Its eyes opened, and they held intelligence that made Cale feel like an insect. The creature's head alone was the size of Ashwing's entire body. It could have swallowed him without noticing, but it did not attack. Instead, it lowered its enormous head and looked at Cale with curiosity. A voice entered Cale's mind, not in words, but in concept that his brain struggled to translate. Images flooded his consciousness. Eons of time, continents shifting, stars being born and dying. The Colossus had been sleeping for thousands of years, hibernating in the planet's depths. Soft scale, the presence in his mind said, the word feeling ancient and heavy. You are different. You are bridge. Cale's knees buckled under the weight of the telepathic contact. I am Cale, he managed to say aloud, though he knew the creature heard his thoughts more clearly than his words. I am called Worldbreaker, the presence replied. I have waited long for one who walks between kinds. More images came. Massive ships descending from the sky, fire raining from above, Drakes dying by the hundreds. A future that had not yet happened but was approaching like a storm. Your birth kind comes, Worldbreaker said. They see us as beasts to be removed. They do not hear our songs. They do not know we think, we dream, we remember. Kale's chest tightened. Humans, his species, coming to destroy the only family he had ever known. How long, he asked. 3 moon cycles. Perhaps less. Kale looked up at the massive creature towering above him. Then we need to make them understand. I need to go back. Back to the humans. Worldbreaker's enormous. I focus on him. You would speak for us? Knowing they may kill you as they will kill us. Kale thought of Ashwing, who had saved him when she should have let him die. He thought of the drakes who had taught him to survive, to hunt, to belong. Yes, he said firmly. I will speak, and you will carry me. The ancient Colossus made a sound like continents grinding together, laughter, perhaps, or approval. Then climb, little bridge. We have far to fly. The space station Kepler, 442b, orbited a blue giant star, serving as the administrative heart of the Galactic Council. On this particular morning, Station Commander Rakesh Patel was drinking his 3rd coffee and reviewing mining contract approvals when every alarm in the facility began screaming at once. Commander, unidentified massive object entering system. His sensor officer's voice cracked with panic. Sir, it's biological. Patel's coffee cup shattered on the floor as he stared at the main display. The creature approaching them was impossibly large, its wings spanning distances that starships required engines to cross. Worldbreaker moved through space as naturally as fish move through water, his ancient body protected by scales that had survived meteor impacts and solar radiation for millennia. On the Colossus's back, secured by harnesses made from braided drake leather, Kale Rourke sat facing the station that represented everything he had never known. His heart pounded as they drew closer. He activated the communication device he had salvaged and repaired from the Meridian Hope wreckage, broadcasting on all frequencies. Kepler 442b station, this is Kale Rourke. I am human. I am alive. I request permission to speak before the Galactic Council. Silence filled the channel for a long moment. Then chaos erupted. Kale Rourke is dead. Commander Patel transmitted back, his voice shaking. He died 20 years ago on Draconis 7. Identify yourself properly or we will open fire. I am Kale Rourke, he repeated, his voice steady despite his fear. Check your records. DNA sample from the Meridian Hope Manifest. I survived, and I have come to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. Within minutes, every major news network in the galaxy was broadcasting the image. A wild-looking human riding a creature of nightmare proportions, claiming to be a child lost 2 decades ago. The station's defensive weapons powered up, but no one gave the order to fire. How could they shoot at a human, even one riding a monster? The council convened an emergency session. Kale was allowed to dock, or rather, Worldbreaker was allowed to come close enough for Kale to transfer to a shuttle. The Colossus remained outside, his massive form visible through every window, a reminder what waited beyond the station walls. Kale walked into the council chamber wearing his drakeskin clothes, his feet still bare, moving with a predator's grace that made the guards nervous. The chamber held representatives from 40 different species, and every eye fixed on him as he approached the speaking platform. Ambassador Tsara, a Zenthri with silver skin and 4 arms, leaned forward in her seat. The DNA confirms it, she said softly. He is truly Kale Rourke. But what has he become? Medical officers had already scanned him from a distance. His bone density was twice that of a normal human. His body temperature ran hot, adapted to Draconis 7's extreme environment. His neural patterns showed changes they could not explain, pathways that suggested telepathic capability. I am here about Draconis 7, Kale began, his voice rough from years of Drake speech. You have approved mining operations. You plan to exterminate the Titan Drakes to access the crystalline deposits. Council Member Vross, a corporate representative from the Hegemony Mining Corporation, stood. The Titan Drakes are dangerous animals. The planet's resources are worth trillions. One human's unusual survival does not change economic reality. Kale's jaw tightened. They are not animals. They are intelligent. They have language, culture, mathematics, history spanning thousands of years. Impossible, Ross said dismissively. Our xenobiologists have studied them from orbit. They show no signs of civilization. Because you do not know how to look, Kale responded. He gestured to the window where Worldbreaker waited. Let me show you. Before the council could object, Kale closed his eyes. Worldbreaker's telepathic presence touched his mind, and Kale opened that connection outward, projecting it through the station's neural interface systems that allow different species to communicate. Suddenly, 40 council members gasped as Drake consciousness flooded their minds. They felt the complex mathematical patterns in Drake flight formations, saw the astronomical observations carved into mountain stone, experienced the deep familial bonds and territorial songs that contained histories passed down for generations. They felt joy, fear, love, grief, all the markers of true sentience. Several council members cried out and broke the connection, overwhelmed. Ambassador Tsara remained linked longest, her silver face wet with tears when she finally pulled away. They think, she whispered. By the old stars, they truly think and feel. Ross recovered quickly, his corporate training reasserting itself. Interesting, he said coldly. But contract had been signed, mining rights purchased. The law is clear. The operation proceeds in 30 days. Kale felt rage building in his chest, the same rage he had seen in drakes defending their nests. Then the law is wrong. I will not let you commit genocide. You are one human, Ross said with thin smile. What can you possibly do? Kale looked out at Worldbreaker, then back at the council. I can fight, and I will not be alone. Security guards moved forward to escort him out, but Ambassador Tsara held up a hand. Wait, this matter requires more discussion. We cannot simply proceed after what we have experienced. The Zenthari delegation may discuss as long as they wish, Ross said, gathering his documents. But the fleet launches in 30 days regardless. This meeting is adjourned. Kale was escorted to temporary quarters, treated like a prisoner despite being a victim. Through the window, he watched Worldbreaker circling the station, patient and ancient. In his quarters, he found a message waiting on the communication terminal. I believe you, it read, signed by Ambassador Tsara. But belief is not enough against corporate power. They are coming for your family. I am sorry. Kale placed his hand against the window, feeling the cold of space beyond. Behind him, a news broadcast showed his face alongside footage of Worldbreaker. The headline read, Dragon Boy fights impossible battle. Not impossible, Kale said quietly. Just difficult. He had 30 days to save everyone he loved. Kale stood before the assembled drakes on the highest plateau of Draconis. 7. Something that had never happened in the species' entire history. Hundreds of the massive creatures perched on the surrounding cliffs, their eyes glowing in the twilight. They had come because Worldbreaker had called them, and his authority as an ancient Colossus could not be ignored. Ashwing stood beside Kale, her protective presence a comfort against a sea of predatory faces. Most of these drakes had never seen him before, and their rumbling growls spoke of distrust and confusion. Why had the Ancient One summoned them? Why was a soft scale standing before them, as if he had the right to speak? Worldbreaker's massive form loomed behind them all, his telepathic voice touching every drake mind simultaneously. Listen to the Bridgewalker. What comes affects all nests, all hunting grounds, all future hatchlings. Kale took a deep breath and began speaking in the drake language of harmonics and resonance, his human voice struggling to form sounds he had practiced for weeks. Skyfire comes, metal wings that fly without life. My birth kind comes to take the crystal heart of our world. They will burn the nests, kill the hunters, silence the songs. Images flowed from Worldbreaker into the assembled drakes, visions of orbital bombardment, of plasma weapons scorching stone, of drakes falling from the sky with melted wings. The creatures shifted uneasily, growls turning to roars of anger. A massive male drake, his scales scarred from countless battles, challenged Kale with blasts of flame that stopped just short of burning him. Why should we trust soft-scale words? You are not Drake. You do not belong in our sky. Kale stood his ground despite his racing heart. I am not Drake, he agreed, but I am not fully human either. I am both. I am the warning. I have seen my birth kind's weapons. I have walked in their metal caves. If we fight as separate hunters, we die as separate prey. Another drake, a young female, called out, "Drakes do not fly in packs like lesser beasts. We are solitary hunters. This is our way." "Then our way will end," Kale said sharply. "The metal wings hunt in coordinated swarms. They strike from beyond sight. They do not fight with honor or strength. They fight with numbers and distance." Ashwing added her voice, the deep rumble carrying weight from her years. "The soft scale speaks truth. I have raised him. He thinks like prey and predator together. This makes him valuable now." For 3 days, Kale worked to organize what should have been impossible. He taught territorial drakes to coordinate their flight patterns, to communicate their positions, to attack as unified wings rather than individual hunters. The younger drakes adapted more easily, seeing the logic in his strategies. The older ones resisted, their instincts too deeply ingrained. Worldbreaker helped by waking 3 other colossi from deep hibernation, ancient creatures who emerged from the planet's core with memories spanning millennia. Their combined telepathic network created a communication system that linked drakes across the entire planet. On the 20th day, as Kale was demonstrating flanking maneuvers to a group of adolescent drakes, a small spacecraft descended through the atmosphere. It was not a military vessel, but a civilian cargo ship, battered and modified for speed. Kale recognized the configuration, a smuggler's ship. The pilot who emerged was a human woman in her 40s, wearing a scarf flight jacket, and carried herself with the easy confidence of someone who had talked her way out of 1,000 dangerous situations. Her dark hair was streaked with gray, and her eyes assessed Kale with sharp intelligence. "Kale Rourke," she called out, seemingly unbothered by the dozens of massive predators surrounding her. "I'm Vera Chun. I've been following your story. We need to talk." Kale approached cautiously, gesturing for the drakes to hold their position. "How did you find me?" "Everyone in the galaxy knows where you are," Vera said, pulling up a holographic display from her wrist device. "You're famous. Also, the Council has a fleet heading here. They moved up the timeline. Corporate pressure. They'll arrive in 10 days, not 30. Kale's blood turned cold. 10 days? We're not ready. We need more time." "Nobody ever is," Vera said grimly. She showed him fleet composition data. 12 warships, 40 support vessels, enough firepower to level continents. "I've been running cargo to colonies for 20 years. Seen plenty of corporate resource grabs. This one bothered me enough to risk my ship bringing you intelligence. Why help us?" Kale asked. Vera looked up at Ashwing, who loomed protectively over Kale. "Because I watched a video of you linking minds with the Council. I felt what you showed them. My daughter died when I was running cargo. Couldn't get back in time. Never got to say goodbye." Her voice cracked slightly. "But you got a second chance at family. Damned if I'll let corporations take that away." She pulled a data chip from her pocket. "Fleet movements, weapon specifications, command codes I shouldn't have. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. But you deserve a fighting chance." Kale took the chip, feeling its weight. "They have shields, weapons we can't match. How do we fight that?" Vera smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "The same way small ships beat big ones. Be faster, smarter, and hit what they don't expect. I'll stay and help coordinate. I've got some ideas." Above them, Worldbreaker's voice resonated through the plateau. "The metal wings approach. 10 sun cycles, until battle. We prepare as one or we die as many." Kale looked at the assembled drakes, then at Vera, then up at the crimson sky, where soon death would rain down. 10 days to turn solitary hunters into an army. 10 days to learn to fight an enemy that owned the sky. "Then we start now," he said. "No more practice. This is war." The corporate fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metal locusts, their weapons already charging as they entered orbit around Draconis 7. Admiral Core, commanding from the flagship Prophet Margin, reviewed his tactical display with satisfaction. 12 warships against primitive flying animals. This would be over before lunch. "Begin orbital bombardment of the primary nesting sites," he ordered. Standard extermination protocol. The first plasma missiles launched, streaking toward the floating mountains. They never reached their targets. Worldbreaker and 3 other colossi erupted from the cloud layer, their massive bodies moving impossibly fast for creatures of their size. The ancient beings had learned to manipulate the planet's magnetic fields, propelling themselves through space as naturally as swimming through water. Worldbreaker's jaws closed around Missile, crushing it harmlessly. The other colossi scattered the remaining missiles with bursts of superheated breath. What in the void? Admiral Core stared at his display as biological signatures the size of destroyers appeared on his screens. All ships, evasive action. Engage defensive protocols. Below, Kale sat astride Ashwing's back, wearing a communication headset Vera had rigged for him. Around him, organized wings of drakes rose from every canyon and mountain, moving in coordinated formations he had drilled into them over 10 brutal days. Young drakes carried older ones who could no longer fly as far, maximizing their combat range. Scouts positioned themselves to relay information through Worldbreaker's telepathic network. East Wing, the destroyer is turning toward you, Kale transmitted, watching a tactical display Vera had mounted on Ashwing's harness. Break formation, scatter pattern delta, regroup at the crystal spires. The drakes responded instantly, their improved coordination confusing the warship's targeting systems. Ships designed to fight other ships struggled against opponents who moved in 3 dimensions with organic unpredictability. But the fleet adapted. Automated defense turrets began tracking drake movements, filling the sky with lethal energy beams. Kale watched in horror as a young drake he had personally trained took a direct hit, falling toward the planet trailing smoke and flame. Then another, and another. We're losing too many. Vera shouted over the communication line from her grounded position. Kale, they're figuring out the patterns. You need to change tactics now. Admiral Core smiled coldly as his ships found their rhythm. Maintain fire. The creatures are breaking. Within the hour, we'll have orbital superiority and can commence mining operations on schedule. Kale felt desperation clawing at his chest. The drakes were brave, but bravery meant nothing against overwhelming firepower. He looked up at Worldbreaker, who battled a destroyer in high orbit, and an idea formed, desperate, dangerous, possibly suicidal. Worldbreaker, Kale called through their telepathic link. Can you amplify your connection? Use the planet's crystal network to touch not just drake minds, but human ones? The ancient Colossus paused in his assault. It has never been attempted. The strain might kill you, Bridgewalker. Do it, Kale said firmly. It's our only chance. Worldbreaker descended rapidly, positioning himself above the largest crystal formation on the planet's surface. Kale closed his eyes, opening his mind completely to the Colossus's consciousness. Through Worldbreaker, his awareness expanded to touch every drake fighting in the sky above. Then, as the ancient being channeled power to the crystalline network, Kale's consciousness exploded outward into space itself. Inside the profit margin, Admiral Core suddenly gasped as alien thoughts flooded his mind. Around him, his crew members cried out, some collapsing at their stations. Across the entire fleet, soldiers and officers experienced what it meant to be a drake. The fierce love of a mother for her hatchlings, the joy of flight through open sky, the terror of watching family members die under weapons fire, the complex songs that carried memories across generations. Lieutenant Sarah Moss, a weapons officer on the destroyer market force, felt tears streaming down her face as she experienced the drake's final moments. The same drake she had just shot down. She saw its memories, teaching a youngling to hunt, mourning a lost mate, defending a nest against predators. It had been a person, not a monster. I can't do this, she whispered, her hands frozen over her firing controls. They're their people. We're murdering people. The sentiment rippled through the fleet. Soldiers who moments before had been efficiently executing orders now hesitated, questioned, refused. Admiral Core tried to regain control, screaming orders that went unheeded as mutiny spread like wildfire. On Kepler, 442B station, Ambassador Tsara had been waiting for exactly this moment. She had spent the last 10 days gathering evidence, building coalitions, and preparing emergency legislation. The instant news of the mutiny reached the council chamber. She called for an emergency vote. Draconis, 7 must be declared a protected sentient world immediately, she demanded. The evidence is overwhelming. The current military action constitutes genocide under council law. Council member Ross tried to object, but public opinion had turned decisively. The broadcast of confused, crying soldiers refusing to kill intelligent beings had gone viral across every network. Corporate profit could not withstand the weight of witnessed mass murder. The vote passed by a narrow margin. Within minutes, council peacekeeping forces were dispatching to Draconis, 7 with orders to halt all military operations. The corporate contracts were voided pending investigation. Admiral Kor sat in his command chair, watching his fleet fall apart around him, knowing his career was over. On his screen, he could see the massive creature that had broken his forces, not through superior weapons, but through something far more devastating: empathy. 3 months later, Kale stood on the same plateau where he had first gathered the Drakes. But now he was not alone with his Drake family. Scientists, diplomats, and journalists from dozens of species had come to Draconis, 7, setting up careful research stations that respected Drake territory. Vera Chun had stayed, helping establish communication protocols and building infrastructure. Ashwing rested beside him, her breathing labored with age but her eyes still bright with intelligence. Kale stroked her scarred snout gently, remembering the days she had saved a crying human infant instead of killing it. Young humans and Drakes trained together in a nearby valley, learning each other's languages and ways. The galaxy had changed in a moment, forced to acknowledge that intelligence wore many forms, that family could transcend species, that bridges between worlds were built by those brave enough to stand between them. Worldbreaker's voice resonated in Kale's mind, warm with approval. You were the bridge we needed, small one, the bridge between earth and sky. Kale looked up at the ancient Colossus, then down at the new generation learning below. He responded in both human words and Drake harmonics, his voice carrying on the wind. No, he said softly. We build it together. Above them, ships from 100 worlds descended peacefully through the crimson sky, bringing not weapons but wonder.